The sound of crystal shattering against marble cut through the air like a gunshot. For a second, I didn't even realize it came from my own hand. I'd felt the champagne flute slip from my trembling fingers, watched it burst into 1,000 tiny diamonds across the floor, and then nothing. The music stopped. The laughter died. Even the air went still, like the whole world just froze to see what I'd done. And then she said it. "You stupid, clumsy country woman." Her words cut deeper than the slap that came after. I dropped to my knees, glass crunching under me, and reached for the pieces like I'd done my whole life, just cleaning up someone else's mess. My voice came out small. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to. I was just trying to help." She pulled back, her voice sharp as a knife. "Don't touch me." And before I could breathe, her hand cracked across my face. The sound echoed through that grand hall, louder than any music they could have played. I froze. My cheek burned. My heart pounded so loud it felt like the room could hear it. And then, through the ringing in my ears, I heard a voice I'd know anywhere. "My boy, Victoria. What did you just do?" I looked up through the blur. He was standing there at the edge of the stage, glass in hand, his face pale, eyes like steel. The same eyes his daddy had when he was pushed too far. "My name's Connie Lawrence. I'm 68 years old, and if you'd told me this morning I'd end the night on my knees in a marble hall in New York City, I'd have laughed right in your face. But life has a way of twisting on you, doesn't it? I grew up in a coal town in West Virginia. We used to say the dust got into everything. Your lungs, your clothes, even your dreams. My husband, Thomas, worked in those mines since he was 16. He was a good man, strong, proud, until the coal took him piece by piece. The doctors called it black lung. I called it murder by inches. He survived a cave-in once, came home limping, coughing, and smiling that same stubborn smile. But you can't beat a mountain forever. The dust filled him up till he couldn't breathe without pain. When he passed, I thought I'd already cried all the tears I had. Turns out I was wrong. I had a son, Liam, smartest kid in the county. Too smart for that dying town. But school costs money, and money's a language we never spoke fluently. I took shifts at the diner, 8, sometimes 10 hours on my feet, serving eggs to men too tired to talk and too broke to tip. When the diner closed, I cleaned houses, scrubbed floors so hard the bleach cracked my hands open. You ever work so much your bones hum at night? That was me. I remember hiding my hands from Liam so he wouldn't see the blisters. He had dreams, and I had calluses. That's how we kept going. He wanted to take advanced placement classes, needed money for the fees. I went to the high school wearing my best dress, the one I'd worn to Thomas's funeral, and I asked the principal for an extension. The man looked at me like I was dirt under his shoe. He said, "Mrs. Lawrence, rules are rules." I stood there, trying not to beg, but I guess he saw it anyway, because he finally sighed and said he'd allow it. Made me sign a paper, promising to pay. My hands shook so bad I could hardly hold the pen. What I didn't know then was that Liam had seen the whole thing, watched his mama get humiliated, just to buy him a chance at a better life. That day lit something in him, a fire I didn't understand at the time. He worked harder after that, barely slept. I worked harder too. I sold the only things Thomas left me worth anything, his pocket watch and stamp collection. Told Liam it was savings, told him not to worry, and he believed me. He went to college. got out, built something the world couldn't ignore. By the time he was 37, he was a millionaire. Hell, a billionaire. A tech genius, with suits that cost more than my car. And one spring morning, he came home in a car so shiny, I could see my whole past in its reflection. "Come on, Mom," he'd said. "You're not staying here anymore." Next thing I knew, I was on a private jet, headed to New York City, staring out the window at clouds like whipped cream. When we landed, I stepped into a world that didn't feel real. Glass, steel, marble, and money. His penthouse looked like something out of a dream. Or maybe a movie. He introduced me to Victoria a week later. Lord, she was beautiful. Tall, perfect hair, voice like soft music. She smiled at me like I was some sweet relic. Said she admired Liam's story. So inspiring, she called it. But when he wasn't around, her eyes turned cold. She corrected my words, my clothes, my manners, suggested places I could shop. Like I had any use for $1,000 dresses. At dinner parties, she'd make little jokes that sounded kind, but cut deep. "Oh, Connie," she'd say with that fake laugh. "We're using Tiffany silver tonight, not Dynaforks." Everyone laughed politely. Everyone except me. And I sat there smiling, pretending it didn't hurt. Then came the wedding. A grand museum hall. Marble floors shining like mirrors. Cameras flashing. Laughter ringing off the walls. I stood near the back, trying to stay out of the way. That's when I saw the young waiter struggling with a tray of champagne flutes. The poor boy's hands were shaking. I saw it before anyone else did. I knew he was gonna drop it, so I stepped forward, trying to help, like I've done all my life. I steadied the tray, smiled at him, said, "You're doing just fine, son." But when I stepped back, my heel caught on the rug. The tray tipped. Time slowed. Glasses flew. Champagne splashed all over Victoria's dress. The world stopped. And then she screamed. I'll never forget her face. The rage. The disgust. "Do you even know what you've done, you clumsy backwater woman? You've ruined everything." I tried to speak. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was just..." The slap came fast. I froze, the burn spreading across my cheek. The silence after was heavier than any sound I'd ever heard. Then Liam's voice broke through it all. "Victoria, what did you just do?" He walked right up, face pale but calm. He took off his tux jacket and put it around my shoulders, kneeling beside me like the world wasn't watching. "She's not staff," he said. "She's my mother," gasps, whispers. Cameras flashing like lightning. He stood tall, eyes cold as winter. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming." He paused. "The reception's over, and so is my marriage." The whole hall erupted. Reporters, cameras, chaos. I just sat there on the marble floor, stunned, watching my son walk away from everything he'd built for me. That night changed everything. But the storm was just getting started, because the next morning, the world had already seen the video, and our lives would never be the same again. If you're still listening, don't go anywhere. You're gonna want to hear what happened next, because what came after wasn't revenge. It was something far harder, something that tests what forgiveness really means. By sunrise, the world already knew my name. I didn't though, not yet. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand. I thought maybe it was a wrong number. I didn't even know how to use half the buttons on that fancy smartphone Liam had bought me. But when I finally picked it up, I saw hundreds of messages lighting up the screen. The first one I opened was from an old friend back home. "Connie girl, is that you in that video?" I didn't understand what she meant until I saw the clip. That same slap, that same silence. My boy stepping forward in his tux, saying those words, "She's not staff. She's my mother." It was everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Lord, even the news. They were calling it the wedding slap heard around the world. By the time I turned on the TV, I saw my own face on the morning shows. They called me the humble mother, the woman of quiet dignity. There were hashtags, Mother Lawrence, wedding slap. I choose my mother. People were crying over a video of something I just wanted to forget. But for every kind word, there were cruel ones too. Folks twisting the story, saying I did it on purpose, that I wanted attention, that I ruined my son's big day because I couldn't handle being around money and power. I didn't want any of it. I didn't want fame. I didn't want pity. I just wanted it all to stop. When Liam came into the kitchen that morning, he looked like he hadn't slept. His jaw was tight, his eyes red. "Mom," he said quietly, "don't look at the news. Please." Too late for that, I told him, stirring my coffee. "They're calling me America's mother now. Can you believe that? Lord help me." He tried to smile, but I could see the guilt eating him alive. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that." I reached across the table, touched his hand. "Son, you didn't do anything wrong. You did what any good man would do. You stood up for what's right." He nodded, but he didn't look convinced. See, what he didn't tell me yet was how bad it had gotten online. By noon, Victoria's name was trending right next to mine, but for all the wrong reasons. Every headline painted her as the villain. Every comment section was a war zone. People digging through her past, calling her every name in the book. And that fancy career she had, gone within 24 hours. Magazines dropped her. The brands she modeled for cut her loose. Even her own family put out some cold little statement, pretending they had no idea what she was capable of. Liam didn't say it out loud, but I knew he was angry. Angry at her, angry at himself, angry at the world for turning something private into a circus. That afternoon, we walked outside, and there were cameras waiting. Flashbulbs popped like fireworks. "Mrs. Lawrence, how does it feel to be a hero? Did you really forgive your son's fiancée? Do you think she deserved it?" I froze, blind from the flashes. Liam stepped between me and the crowd. "No more questions," he said, his voice cold as stone. Then he pulled me into the car. In the silence that followed, I just stared out the window, watching the city blur by. "This isn't your fault, Mom," he whispered. I shook my head. "No, baby, but it ain't hers anymore either. Not really. The world already decided for her." He didn't answer. He just gripped the steering wheel tighter. Days passed. Weeks. The video wouldn't die down. Every time I turned on the TV, someone was still talking about us, about me, about that slap. I told Liam I wanted to go home, back to West Virginia. I missed my old kitchen, my small porch, my quiet mornings. He said, "Mom, just give it a little time. It'll fade." But it didn't. Not really, because the internet doesn't let things fade. It just feeds them until there's nothing left. One night, Liam came home from work late. He looked tired in a way I'd never seen before. "You were right," he said, setting down his briefcase. This story's gotten out of control. but maybe it's doing some good." "What kind of good?" I asked. He turned on the TV. There was a talk show playing. A woman sitting in a studio, crying on camera. She said, "I saw that video, and it made me call my mama after 5 years of not speaking. I just wanted to tell her I'm sorry." Liam smiled, small and sad. "That's the good, Mom. People are remembering their mothers." I didn't know what to say. My heart ached, but it also swelled with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. Every time I saw Victoria's face in the news, pale and trembling, I thought of that slap. Not the one she gave me, but the one the world gave her back. And I wondered which hurt worse. Weeks later, Liam took me upstate to a quiet cabin surrounded by trees and silence. No reporters, no city noise, just us. I thought maybe things could finally settle down. But the funny thing about silence, it gives your thoughts room to talk. And mine wouldn't stop whispering. Every night I'd sit by the window, thinking about that girl, Victoria. I tried to hate her. Lord knows I did. But I couldn't, because deep down, I knew what desperation looked like. I'd seen it in my own mirror for years. I just didn't expect to see her again. It was 3 months later, on a rainy afternoon. I'd started volunteering at a soup kitchen in Brooklyn. Needed something to do with my hands again. Couldn't stand sitting around doing nothing. The place was small, warm, smelled like stew and old bread. I felt at peace there. Then one day, I looked up from the counter and froze. She was standing in line. Her hair was dirty, her eyes hollow. No makeup, no jewelry, no silk dresses. Just a cheap coat and trembling hands. For a second, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But then she looked up, and I saw it. It was her. Victoria. She froze when she saw me too. The line behind her kept moving, but she didn't. I could see her fighting tears. I didn't move either. The room felt heavy, like time had stopped again. Just like that night on the marble floor. She finally stepped forward, voice cracking. "Mrs. Lawrence, But her words broke before they could finish. She covered her mouth, crying silently. I don't know why I did it. I was selfish, angry, blind. I ruined everything. I hurt your son. I hurt you. I don't know how to fix it. I stood there, hands trembling around the ladle. I could have said so many things, angry things, bitter things. But looking at her, I didn't see the woman who slapped me. I saw someone broken in a way I understood too well. So I turned, filled a bowl with soup, grabbed a piece of bread, and set it in front of her. "Everyone makes mistakes," I said quietly. "Forgiveness is easy, darling. Living in a way that don't need it. That's the hard part. Now sit down and eat. You look too thin." She stared at the bowl, then at me, tears spilling down her cheeks. She nodded, sat down, and started to eat. I went back to serving the next person in line. My hands didn't shake this time. That night, back at the penthouse, Liam came home from work. I was on the balcony, staring at the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened. He joined me, wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "You okay, Mom?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." He smiled. "You know, you could have done a lot of things to her today." I looked at him. "Yeah, but I already did the one thing that mattered." He tilted his head. "What's that?" "I gave her a meal," I said softly. "Sometimes that's the only way to start over." He smiled again, but there was something new in his eyes. Respect, pride, love. We stood there for a while, silent, just watching the lights flicker below. but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end, not yet, because stories like ours don't end with forgiveness. They end with truth. And there was one more truth I still had to tell my son. One that would change everything all over again. So don't go nowhere, sweetheart. The hardest part's still coming. The night air was cool and quiet, the kind that carries every small sound. I could hear the city hum below, the soft whistle of wind between buildings, the faint pulse of a world that never really sleeps. Liam had gone to bed, but I couldn't. I sat out on the balcony, wrapped in my old knit shawl, holding a cup of coffee gone cold hours ago. There was something I hadn't told him, something I'd carried for years, buried so deep it almost became part of me. But after everything we'd been through, the wedding, the slap, the headlines, the forgiveness, it felt wrong to keep hiding it. He deserved the truth. I went inside, quiet so I wouldn't wake him, but he was already sitting at the kitchen table. Laptop closed, eyes tired. Couldn't sleep either, I asked. He shook his head. Nah, too much noise in my head. I smiled softly. Then maybe we should talk, 'cause there's a kind of noise I need to let out too. He frowned, curious, but waited. I took a deep breath. Liam, do you remember the money for your college? When I told you I sold your daddy's watch and stamps? Yeah, he said slowly. You said that's how you paid the fees. I nodded, my voice low. That wasn't true. He blinked confused. Then how? I looked down at my hands. There was a man back then, a foreman at the mine. He used to stop by the diner, always said he could help me out if I ever needed it. I said no 100 times, but then your acceptance letter came, and I didn't have a dime to my name. You were so happy, baby, so proud. My voice cracked, so I said yes. I cleaned his house for months, nights, weekends. He paid me cash under the table, no questions asked. But the truth is, he wanted more than cleaning. And one night, when I refused, he took what he wanted anyway. Liam froze, face turning pale. Mom. Tears burned my eyes. I told myself I did it for you, that your future mattered more than my shame. But the truth is, I was scared. Scared you'd hate me if you knew what I'd done to make your dreams real. He stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. His hands were trembling, his jaw clenched tight. Who was he? Is he still alive? I reached out, grabbed his hand before the anger could swallow him. Don't. It's done. It was a lifetime ago. You've given me more than enough light to wash that darkness away. He knelt down beside me, just like he did that night on the marble floor, his eyes glistening. You didn't deserve that, Mom. Maybe not, I said softly. But life don't care much about what we deserve. It just keeps moving, and we decide if we keep standing or stay down. For a long time, we just sat there in silence, the kind that doesn't need words. Then Liam whispered, Why tell me now? I looked at him and smiled sadly. Because you spent your whole life trying to protect me. But baby, you can't build your whole world on half a truth. You needed to know where your roots really came from. The hard parts too. He nodded slowly, wiping his eyes. You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. I chuckled softly. Nah, I just got good at getting back up. We talked until the sky started turning pink over the skyline. By the time the sun rose, it felt like a weight I'd carried my whole life had finally slipped off my shoulders. In the weeks that followed, life quieted down. The media found a new scandal to chew on. and the world forgot about the wedding slap. Liam started a foundation, called it the Lawrence Promise, to help single mothers pay for their kids' education. Said it was inspired by one woman's hands that built everything I am. He made me the first honorary chair. I didn't even know what that meant, but Lord, it sounded fancy. We went back home for the first time in years. The old house still stood, weathered and cracked, but it was ours. Liam wanted to fix it up, turn it into something special. A place where stories like ours can start again, he said. So we did. We turned that dusty home into a shelter for women rebuilding their lives. Every room filled with laughter, with kids running through the halls, with hope stitched into every corner. One evening, while we were hanging pictures, Victoria showed up again. She looked different, lighter somehow, like she'd finally found her footing again. She'd started volunteering at the same shelter, told me she wanted to help other women who'd lost themselves along the way. We hugged that day, both crying like old friends, not out of guilt, not out of pain, but out of peace. People online still talk about that slap sometimes, call it justice, karma, divine payback. But that's not what it was. It wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation, about how sometimes the ugliest moments in life uncover the truest parts of who we are. I used to think pain was a curse. Now I know it's a teacher. It breaks you open, just enough to let the light in. One night, months later, Liam and I sat on the porch of that same old house, watching the sun dip behind the mountains. He leaned back, smiling. You ever think about how far we've come? I laughed softly. Every damn day. He looked at me for a long time. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. I smiled. Nah, you'd still be here. You just wouldn't have someone nagging you about your laundry. We both laughed till tears rolled down. Then he said, Mom, what do you want the world to remember about you? I thought about it, about all the years, all the pain, all the love that survived it. Then I said, I don't need 'em to remember me. I just want 'em to remember this. Don't ever let the world shame you for where you came from, because sometimes the dirt you crawled through is the very ground that grows your strength. He nodded, quiet for a moment. Then he looked out at the horizon and whispered, That's beautiful, Mom. I reached over, squeezed his hand. Now stop being sentimental and go fix that porch light before it kills someone. We laughed again, the sound carrying into the fading day, and as the stars started to bloom above us, I realized something. After a lifetime of struggling to stand tall in other people's worlds, I'd finally built one of my own, a small world, a good world, built on forgiveness, truth, and love. So if you're still listening, sweetheart, don't wait for some big moment to change your life. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of courage, a choice to tell the truth, a choice to forgive, a choice to love anyway. And if you ever find yourself kneeling on the floor, surrounded by broken glass, remember this old woman's words. You ain't broken. You're just about to begin again. So keep going, because the story ain't over till you decide it is. Now, if that story touched your heart, even a little, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. You never know whose hope you might reignite.